Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Self-Published Success, a show that highlights forward-thinking authors who chose self-publishing over traditional and found success in doing so. My name is John Feldman, founder of Visionary Literary and your host for today's show. Our guest today is Don Markland. Don is the founder and CEO at Accountability Now. He's also a sales, revenue, and executive coach and a business strategist. As a coach, founder, and contributor to Forbes, Debt.com, and others, Don has helped many companies on their path to growth. He is also the author of The 4 C's of Accountability, Unleash Your Inner Hero. And today he's going to help you to remain accountable on your writing journey. Don, welcome to the show.
John, thank you for having me. And I know you've got a ton of questions, but I want to tell you how much I love your podcast and the place to have a voice for, aspiring authors. Back when I first started my first business and I had the first idea to write a book, there weren't podcasts in, the late 2000s. So you had to go to this place called the library. I don't know if anybody knows what that it is anymore, but that's where you had to go and figure stuff out. And I mean, even then it was the early days of Google. So it wasn't all this content. And the fact that you do this, it would have changed my trajectory, being able to hear mistakes from so many other people and go, okay, don't do that. Don't do that. So thank you for having this and this. I don't know if people realize the work you put into creating this, and I appreciate it very much.
Well, we appreciate having you here, and definitely you make a very good point there, the mistakes. So obviously the point of the show is to highlight all the good that's been done and kind of tips and ideas for aspiring authors, but learning from others' mistakes is so important too. So excited to have you here. There's so much more that goes into what I just mentioned in that quick bio. So give us a little 90-second overview of you and your background.
Yeah, so I got into entrepreneurship and authorship and things in a backwards way. Now, out of true fairness, I minored in British literature in college, and so I mean, I'm a Charles Dickens and Shakespeare fanatic. It drives my wife and family crazy how much I reached Charles Dickens, read all of his work, most of it 3 or 4 times. Like I just
Wow.
love, and my kids, when they get in trouble, like when they get grounded, you can stay grounded as long as it takes you to read a Charles Dickens book. And that's true. So my kids have read most of Charles Dickens' work because when they get grounded, go read David Copperfield, and that'll take them a long time, right? And
Yeah.
so that's our method of punishment. We give them Dickensian work. But I I was a corporate guy for a long time, and then it was when I was in corporate America when I came up with the 4 C's of accountability. It was a personal mantra for myself to understand my life better, manage my life better, and and it changed my whole life. I lost 70 pounds. I started to be more
Wow.
successful in the way I managed and led people. And the business I was with, we ended up growing to about 50 million before I moved into a startup, my very first startup. And I was a co-owner of that business, which we grew to about 2 million before we sold it. My wife went through a battle of cancer, and when she went through cancer, it was accountability and the 4 C's that got us through it, helped us realize that. And now we live here in Florida. This when we lived in Utah, but now here in Florida, we've used it when I've worked in other businesses, and helped grow a financial services business up to 89 million before we sold to private equity. And all of that came, that was when I was chief revenue officer and co-owner. All that came because of accountability. And my first day at that financial services business, I like tattooed the 4 C's on the wall. So everybody had to learn it. And it was from there when I started writing for Forbes and other places that people started reaching out and saying, Don, we need accountability in our business. We need it in my life. I need it in my marriage. And so we started my business, which I do full time now, Accountability Now. And we work with individuals, leaders, and businesses, not just about accountability, but about growth and sales growth and operations growth. And it's been wonderful. And this is a shameless plug, but we were named by Inc.com to be their best in business, top 5 management consultant company in the country last year. It was a big win for us.
Congratulations.
Thank you. None of it would have occurred if I hadn't sat in a break room back in 2006 and said, my life is not where I want it to be. I need to understand accountability better. And I wrote on this little notebook, which I still have, the 4 C's of accountability. And that's how my life changed.
That's actually what I was going to ask you. I wanted to hear the story. There was so much in that, and how accountability and the 4 C's have changed your life. So I wanted to hear that story. Like, how did it come to you? So you were sitting in that break room. Where did the 4 C's, where did they come from? Where did they stem?
Great interview question, by the way. That was a great lead-in interview question. Awesome work. So, um, I at the time I had 3 children that were uh, under the age of 6. Right, so we had young kids.
Mm,
My wife and I were married, and I was, like I mentioned, about 70 pounds heavier than I am now. I was a big guy, and I'm sitting in this break room in Rock Falls, Illinois. I just trained about 500 call center agents on some different sales and stuff. And I was sitting in there. I was. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the amazing restaurant Taco Bell. Yes, you've heard of Taco Bell.
I think I have.
Yeah. So I was sitting in there polishing off probably my second chalupa. And look, I don't eat chalupas anymore because I try to be a little healthier, but they are the greatest thing on planet Earth, right? There's a reason I was so heavy. And as I was sitting there, I had this moment where I realized my life wasn't where I wanted it to be. I couldn't hold my employees accountable. We weren't growing. I felt terrible. I did not like the way I felt. My energy was bad. And I needed what I called later, I learned I needed clarity. That's what I needed. Really clear. Brendon Burchard, the author and coach, he always talks about clarity. And I needed that. And so at the time, I carried around this little quote notebook because this was the early days of smartphones. And so I didn't have, now I have all my quotes saved on my phone, right?
Yeah.
But back then, you actually had to go analog, right? You had to have, paper. And I would write around these quotes. And I opened it and I was looking through it. And I came across a quote by a guy named Bob Proctor, where he said, accountability is the glue that ties commitment to results. And
Like
I was
that.
like, that's super awesome. And so as I sat there, I thought, how can I get more accountability in my life? Now, at the time, I was still in sales and marketing, so I always thought in a marketing concept. And as
Yeah.
I was going through it, I thought, okay, and I came up with the 4 C's. I thought it was marketable. I thought it was cool, but it was never about I was going to ever write a book or sell this thing. It was, hey, I need better accountability in my life because I believe the thesis. If I can improve accountability, I can accomplish anything that I want. And that ended up proving true. I've been able to sell 2 businesses and have a great life and have a very successful $1 million business now. Um, all because I started to focus on what accountability was, how it works.
That's awesome. And I love to hear that story too. It's not necessarily rags to riches, but like where you are now to where you want to be, you found the path and you continue on that path. And it's been since 2006. That's still a lot of success. It might seem like what, 17 years, 16 years, like it might seem
Yeah.
like a long time, but it's really not. I'm sure that 16 years has flown by. Your kids are probably older now, and but
Yeah. I
you
have a
have,
son in
yeah.
college. I have a daughter that's going to be in college next year. And yeah, like we'll be empty nesters in 3 years, believe it or not.
Oh my
We can't
goodness.
believe that. Yeah. But it is, and that's for anybody listening, is from the bottom of the mountain, it feels like it's a long hike. When you look up and you go, wow, I'll never get to the top. Just like last 2 weeks ago, my wife and I were in Scotland and we hiked Arthur's Seat, which is this enormous, very famous peak in Edinburgh, Scotland. And I had that same thought at the bottom. I've had 2 knee surgeries. So as I sat on the bottom, I looked up and I thought, and there's no way I'm going to get up this thing. And then I was not put my head down and let's just go. Let's just not stop. Let's just keep going.
Mm.
And we did. I slipped a couple of times because I'm clumsy and I got mud all over me. But before I knew it, I was halfway. Before I knew it, I was 3/4 away. And before I knew it, I was standing at the top, looking over Edinburgh and realizing how beautiful this was. And that's the same journey for anybody. If I want to write a book or if I want to
Yeah.
get it published or whatever it is, don't look at the bottom and look up and say, well, there's no way. Of course, it's hard, it's high.
Yeah.
Just put your head down and keep plugging.
I love that. Congrats for taking that risk and for, even with your knees going up there and seeing that. That's a once in a lifetime visual that, traveling is something that we all want to do, and to be able to do that, to be there and to, push forward. Um, good for you. So
Thank you.
accountability. You hold yourself accountable in many different ways, but you're kind of spread thin with your time. So you've already multiple businesses, you've sold some, you're still doing this, and you're contributing for all these different sites. When it comes to there have to be days where you're like, "Oh my God, I just can't do it. I'm tired." So many different excuses that you can put into your head. So when it comes to everything that you're doing, like how do you keep yourself accountable on a daily basis?
All right, let's do that. I'll talk a little bit about accountability,
Okay.
right? Of how that works. And we'll touch a little bit on the 4 C's, so everybody can understand it, because that's how we live by it. So the first part is where, and I got this wrong for years, and my whole life changed when I got it right. We oftentimes think accountability is only applicable on the mistake. And you think about our vernacular as a human society, we say, "Oh, you better hold them accountable, right? You better go hold that person accountable. I need to be held accountable for when I screw up." Okay. And that is not accurate at all. Accountability is only being responsible for the every decision you make, intentional every decision you make.
Hmm.
So I want your listeners, myself, yourself, everything. I want to be held just as accountable, if not more, for when I do it well and I do it right, as I would for the mistake. And that's where we miss. Oftentimes we beat ourselves up really well.
Yeah.
You do that, I do that, my wife does. Everybody sits there and criticizes themselves to death.
Yeah.
But then when they do something well, they don't do anything on it. I want you to look at when you nail something. I want you to be all over yourself on it. Like, oh my gosh, how could you do so awesome? How could you crush it so well? Same language. Accountability applies to the decisions you make. And when you start from that premise, everything starts to change, and you start to do more of what is right and less of what is wrong.
I love
Just
that.
on that. And that's just the philosophy of the 4 C's, not even the tactical initiatives of the 4 C's, but that overarching philosophy. I've seen that introduction change sales teams, change individuals, change marriages. We have a whole life coaching portion of our business where we work in relationship coaching, for anxiety, bad habits, those types of things. And
Yeah.
that introduction concept, I've seen people, their whole life changes when they get off and go, wow, all I've been doing is beating me up. And I didn't realize I was doing so much well. I'm going to hold myself accountable so much better now.
That is funny because you mentioned at the beginning there that accountability has always seemed we hear it as like a negative. Right? Be accountable, but you're you're bringing this sort of energy to it that's positive and obviously transformative. You're saying that it's changing marriages, businesses, like that. That's absolutely incredible. So to be able to just spin that, it's the same word, but we're just viewing it in a different way. So
We're
yeah.
viewing it as it is. We've always been viewing it in the wrong way as a
Ah,
society. And
yeah.
I'm trying to say, look, you're only looking, you got to look at the whole piece. You
Yeah.
have to look at the whole piece. Otherwise, all you're doing is self lashing and hitting yourself and beating yourself up. That's not accountable. That's
Yep.
misery.
Yes.
Okay. That sucks. That's awful. That's not accountable. That means I hate what my life. And I want you to celebrate your life and love what you're doing. And that's accountability.
So that's a good point when it comes to writing also. So you're saying that you're like you get angry. Here's like writing and publishing a book is a very long process. And and I know most people listening know that again, there's so much to it. It can last weeks, months, years.
Yeah.
And there are so many days where it's like if you don't sit down after work and write your 500 words, 1,000 words, you get angry with yourself. But how do you remain this in this new positive accountability like mindset? How do you bring that into the writing process?
I love that we're talking through the writing process because so many people have a book inside them. or a
Yes.
story inside them or music inside them,
Mm.
right? And the first thing they suffer from, and I'll quote Tony Robbins, is they suffer from the shouldas. You should have all over yourself, as he likes to say, right? I should have done this. I should have done this. Who gives a crap? There's no such thing. That's you putting false expectations, right?
Yeah.
And the first thing to remember about all writing process is perfection doesn't exist. You won't write
Yes.
every day. You'll miss your work.
Yes.
Well, I mean, when I first tried to write a book, I was so frustrated. It wasn't, I mean, this is going way back, but when I was a little kid, my parents bought me a typewriter for Christmas. Well, Santa Claus got me the typewriter, technically speaking. And I was determined to be the world's greatest author. And I mean, I was like 10 years old.
That's
I
awesome.
sat down at this typewriter to try to write. And guess what? Nothing came out that was good. It wasn't poetic. It wasn't storytelling. I was like, this is what I'm writing. I'm terrible. And so, no joke, 1 week after Christmas, I took that typewriter and threw it down the stairs. I said, I hate this thing. Because I blamed the machine because I was trying to be perfect. And it took me years to realize perfection isn't real. Right. And that's the first thing you have to all give yourself is the concept of grace. And grace isn't Christian theology. It's used in Christian theology. But grace is accepting for who you are and forgiving for who you're not. Right. So you accept who you are and you forgive yourself for the things you're not. I'm not perfect, and that's okay. I missed a day. That's okay. I just wrote something that probably sucks.
Yeah.
Right. That's okay. And so as part of the process, you said it already, and all you have to do is go Google what are the best writing ways to write a book, and almost every blog or content piece is going to say write every day.
Yes.
Write every day. And that's when I wrote the 4 C's, actually put it into a book form, was my wife and I were going to Europe for 2 weeks, and I said, I'm going to write every day. I get up at 4 in the morning. I'm kind of a weirdo like that. I like to get up early. And so here we were on the streets of Paris, and I woke up at 4 in the morning. I'd walk out and I would sit on the street and I wrote every day.
Oh, that
And
sounds like
we did it
heaven.
again. We did it in Italy. We did it in London. And every day I just wrote every day. And at the end of 2 weeks, it was actually on the flight home when I kind of patched it all together. I had the book. It was done. And I realized this book was always inside me. I just never prioritized the time to write every day. And now I write literally every day, either on the next book or whether I'm writing for Forbes or I'm writing for one of these other pieces. I write every day. And sometimes it's garbage. Sometimes I write something and it's not very good and I never use it again. And then sometimes it's great, and that's okay.
And even when you write the pieces that are garbage, you at least get them out of your head and you realize, like, okay, I thought this was an idea. Maybe it's not something, or it can be a note for later. You can save it in some kind of drafted
Yeah.
document and you come back to it when you have a follow up thought and you're like,
Yeah.
okay, that is going to
That's
perfect me.
right.
Yeah.
Or it's practice,
Or
right?
it's practice. Yes.
Writing is a skill. And this is where I took me years to realize it. Right. So my story of writing for Forbes, I'll share this silly story, but when I had our first business, we had this idea. Well, I got the idea. If I write for Forbes, the business will be successful. That's what I believe. So, and I thought I was a good writer at the time. So I put together, a 1,000-word article. I found the editorial spot on Forbes. You can send it in. This is in 2013. So in 2013, I sent them an article waiting for all my glory and all these things. They didn't respond. They didn't do anything. Now, I have a habit where I write down my goals every morning. And one of the goals I was writing down at the time was I write for Forbes. I wrote that every morning. And so the next month, I sent them another article, no response, but I was still writing my goals. And the next month, another article, nothing, but I wrote down my goals every day. I sent them an article a month, every month in 2013, 2014, 2015, 2016, 2017. And then in 2018, May 2018, I got an email back. Hey, you wrote about this concept. We'd like to publish this and have you be a contributor. And then we worked through the whole process. They didn't mention the 50,000 freaking words that I had sent prior, but I didn't care. And what I realized was that process, that refinement, made me a better writer because I mean, I was writing 1,000 words a month and getting no feedback, nothing. So I
Yeah.
was having to study online, read online. I took 2 courses during that time about writing, and I intentionally, the rejection made myself better so that I could write for Forbes.
That is
And
some, yeah.
that was the diligence. And it was after that that I ended up writing the Four C's book because now I knew how to write.
Yeah.
I'd been doing it and grinding against it for almost 6 years.
Well, see, that's the business person in you that knows that all of your failures are really just learning lessons. They're not really
Yeah.
failures, you're learning from them, but still to send them monthly articles for 4 years, that's some serious persistence. So you deserve all the credibility that you're getting by writing for Forbes. So
Yeah.
congrats for
Every
pushing
morning
through.
I still, and this is something your group should always remember, write down your goals every morning. I wake up and I go to the bathroom and then I write down my goals. What are my 5 goals? And I wrote down every morning, I write for Forbes. All right, better live that up. Let's go. I write
Yeah.
Forbes. And that's my mentality. I still write down my goals every morning to this day.
So how often are you writing for Forbes now?
Once a month, I publish something every once a month.
Excellent. Good. So we'll make sure that we can link those, your articles or your page inside the show notes so that people can go and see.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah,
Yeah. And even go back and see like maybe where you were, how your writing was in 2017 compared to what it is now. Cause it's always a learning curve. Even though it took you
it
4
is.
years to get that first article, you're still learning. I'm still learning. We're all still learning how to write.
You're
We,
absolutely, look, writing is a skill. Very rarely, there's one of my favorite authors, he's a guy named Stephen King. You'll obviously know who Stephen King is. And his first published novel was The Stand. Okay. And that's too bad because that's his best work. Okay. And very rarely does somebody nail it so well on the first go.
yeah.
Right. Even most authors take them a while. Right. J.K. Rowling, Harry Potter 1 is nowhere nearly as good in quality as book 6 and book 7. Nowhere. And that's because of the refinement and the practice that you take in writing.
Yeah.
Right. And so, you know, don't stress if you're not Stephen King. He's the one of the very few that nailed it. I mean, Charles Dickens, my favorite author, wrote Pickwick Papers was his first one, and that's garbage
Yeah.
compared to Oliver Twist and David Copperfield, right? So,
Yeah.
just that's another part of the grace thing. Accept who you are, forgive who you're not.
Yeah. Oh, I like that. I like that a lot. And I do like the learning curve that comes with consistently writing. So speaking of consistently writing, of getting better, you have the 4 C's out. You have, we were saying before we hit record, but you have 2 more books that are forthcoming.
Yeah, we have one that there's a group called Black Penguin Publishing in the United Kingdom. They are publishing my second book. What it is, it takes the 4 C's. 4 C's is a nonfiction, kind of straightforward business personal development book. And the second book is called Your Hero, a leadership tale. And it tells the story of kind of the 4 C's, but reimagined so that a guy named Jonathan, okay, funny that that's you, but Jonathan is works in a business environment and he's struggling to, it's very similar to my biographical story. Some of it's a little more fabricated and a little cooler, okay, but
That's all
it's
right.
just about Jonathan learning the 4 C's through a series of one-on-one engagement with his boss as he learns this process. And they've accepted to publish that. That's and then the next book that we just finished that we're shopping now is because we spent a lot of time working with coaches
Hmm.
and helping coaches build 6 and 7 figure practices. And so our business is a 7 figure coaching business. So we kind of teach the blueprint of how to do that so they can avoid all these scams out there of people trying to get coaches and consultants to buy courses and stuff. That's
Yeah.
literally just stealing their money, right? Don't do that. We'll give you the blueprint and it'll be super easy for you to follow and understand.
That's awesome. Well, congrats on all of your writing success, on all of your business success. Love to hear all of it. You're obviously someone who, again, you've held yourself accountable and it has made all the difference in the world. So where can people follow you and find more about you and what you do?
Thank you for asking that. I would say, even before you go to find me, make sure you subscribe to this podcast. If you're an aspiring author, I'm going to give your own plug for you. But if you're an aspiring author and you're trying to, you have to surround yourself with positive momentum.
Yes.
Writing is a grind. It's just a consistent grind. And so that's what's great about this podcast, and being able to use you all to get your stuff published. Just surround yourself with positivity that keeps reminding you, hey, if they did it, I can do it. Right? Success leaves clues. So if you're seeing people that can do it, that means you can. It doesn't mean you can't. That proves you can do this too. So that's a big part of it. To find me, the biggest thing is you can go to our. I have a big Instagram. That's our biggest platform that we spend a lot on. ExecutiveCoach.Don. You can follow all of our content on there, or you can just go to my name, donmarkland.com, and you'll learn all about our consulting practice. And if you're a coach, you can learn about our coaching academy and how we get people into that and help them grow. And that's some great ways to do that.
Excellent. Well, thank you. And we'll put that for everyone listening and watching. We'll put it in the show description. And also, like Don was saying, that the writing process is grueling. The whole point of us doing this show is to bring on people like Don who have gone through the process, come out the other side with success, and want to share that success with you. So if you're ready to start that writing project, go to visionaryliterary.com/free book. Get that free book, get started, take these tips that Don has given you and run with it. So Don, thank you again. Excellent episode. Really, really appreciate your time. And we look forward to connecting with you and to hopefully speaking with you again after your other books are published.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much, John, and wish you and everybody else luck. Thank you so much.